For the next 20 minutes, I'm going to give you a little background about our journey. I wince a little when I see us referenced as a success story, because I don't know what we can declare. I can say so far so good. But success, in fact, I think we're going to have a session talking about what does success really mean. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. But Inspire Sheboygan County is what we are. I come from, or I live now in the Sheboygan County area. It's a funny name, but we represent just a county of Wisconsin. We have more than 3, I don't know how many counties in Wisconsin, but more than 3. Just a frame of reference, about 12,000, almost 13,000 students, elementary all the way through high school in Sheboygan County. So that's the frame of reference, but that's our purview at this point. Our journey began, I'm going to take you through a sort of our thought process fairly quickly. I think a lot of you know about this Pathways to Prosperity publication that came out from Harvard. That inspired a lot of people. There was a lot of discussion. There seemed to be this discussion about the skills gap everywhere, and everyone was talking about the skills gap. About a year after that, Tim Sullivan, former CEO of Bucyrus, a major corporation, was assigned a special assignment to look at the workforce development process in Wisconsin and try to revitalize that for Wisconsin. Just shortly after that, in fact, after listening to Tim Sullivan give a speech, I joined a Chamber of Commerce committee, our local Chamber of Commerce, called Business Education Partnership. It had been called Workforce Development. It had been in existence for a while. After a couple meetings where they talked about the skills gap, I come from the business world, so I perhaps should have said that. Education's important to me, but I've been president or general manager of a business for the last 30 years. That's more than I care to recognize. But anyway, but I think it's important, and I didn't like the conversation that was going on. People throwing hand grenades across over the fence at each other. It's too important. Education is too important for our community to have that be kind of a volleyball being thrown back and forth. So I joined this Business Education Partnership and said, okay, so what are we doing about the skills gap? And they'd say, well, there's this skills gap. So yeah, what are we doing about it? Well, there's this skills gap. So we were admiring the problem forever and not doing anything. So got a small group together. We formed this strategic planning team, which I thought was to redefine what this committee was going to do about the skills gap. We all read the Pathways to Prosperity, and really that focused about, first we then started to delve into this skills gap. And you said, okay, but what exactly is the skills gap? What does that mean? Well, if you get the denotation, it's a perceived mismatch between the needs of the employers and the skilled talent and the skills possessed by the available workforce. Okay, that seems pretty obvious, right? But what does that mean? So does that mean that we don't have a pipeline to fill the impending wave of baby boomers that are retiring? Well, yeah, it means that. Does it mean these underemployed or unemployed people that now the skills in their workplace have to, yeah, it means that too. Does it mean these recent grads that are coming out with a diploma, a lot of debt, but not with the needed skills? They're not ready and prepared to do it. Yeah, it means that too. And does it mean, how about the students that are coming out of high school that are not obtaining the skills, or they lack the knowledge, or they lack any interest in any of these positions? Yeah, it means that too. And is that because of some of the stereotypes about, you don't want to go into manufacturing, you don't want to go into the skilled trades? Well, yeah, it was that too. So there was a lot of different places. We said, let's focus in the early feeder system to the K-12 system, right? Instead of, all those are important, and I think you all, and we have an intention to get there. There's lots of programs, we'll talk about that. But we said, we're going to focus upstream to the K-12 students. So we identified some of the root causes of the skills gap. One is the voice of the employer isn't very effectively represented within schools. Sure, some businesses will come if there's a tax hike from the school board, and they'll kind of complain about that, or because the school dance didn't go like they wanted. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a more meaningful dialogue about, so how are we preparing our kids? Lack of awareness and exposure to those career choices. So the kids don't know. They're being taught and they're taking their classwork, but it's not connected. And you can see some kids that find school just boring and drudgery because it's not connected and relevant to where they're heading. And many times they don't have a plan. So we'll talk about that as well. Lack of information or misinformation. And many times that comes from, well, it can come from a number of sources, but many times a parent says, I don't want my kid going into manufacturing. Those are dirty and dangerous. Oh, I'm just making that one up, but that can be is where they're being dissuaded from going in a particular career path, not based on any facts, but based on what they think, all right? And that's what I mentioned about the parental bias. So what Pathways to Prosperity, and I'm assuming many of you have read it or at least heard about it, some of the takeaways of that were that career counseling schools can do a better job of communicating what they're looking for now and in the future, not just now. And they can help then communicate with students. What do they need to do to prepare? Well, that's a communication dialogue, right? How do they do that? Well, this is Inspire Sheboygan County, and this platform allows that to happen. In fact, Mr. Stockbridge's conversation about that was very relevant, and obviously that's part of it. To the extent that there's a meaningful dialogue with the schools, educators, and businesses, they can help design this curriculum. And this is important that businesses don't come in and say, boy, you guys got this all messed up in education, we'll come in and fix it for you. Yeah, that's not what I'm suggesting. I mean, really work it together and saying, so how do we figure this thing out as a feeder system for the future? And providing these work-based learning opportunities. And those can be a variety of things. Mr. Stockbridge mentioned job shadows or internships, but mock interviews. And quite frankly, a company, educators with them, can design whatever work-based learning opportunities they want. And you'll see from the demonstration that this platform allows that to happen. Okay, so the skills gap, which is we hear about, is really, from the employer standpoint, is more about preparing that future workforce. Yeah, a kid in 8th grade or 6th grade, that's an early call, but wouldn't you want to start cultivating and saying, this is what our industry has to offer, and start thinking about, man, that jazzes me, I'm going to start thinking about that. Makes them a better student, quite frankly. And from the student's perspective, we'll call that the career discovery process. But isn't that what they're all about? While they're going through school, they're trying to figure out, they should be trying to think about, what do I want to do? And I know the answer most of the time is, I don't know. And that's okay. That's part of the process, right? Start figuring out. I don't know what I want to do, so figure it out. All right. So let's take a look at what I'm calling the career discovery process, a typical one, all right? You have the school counselor over here, and if it coming across as critical, I'm not. I'm just trying to say this is how I perceive it, and by the way, I'll criticize myself. So here the counselor doing the learning styles or interest surveys. Kids take these things that shows a bunch of jobs you might want to be interested in. Here's the parent and the student working dutifully over on a computer and researching and finding what they want to do and what jazzes them. They kind of identify 3 areas or careers that might be interested in that kid, and they start honing it down. They say they get inspiration from somewhere, whether they're a parent or a teacher or some public figure. Maybe Mr. Stockbridge, there you go. There, he gets inspiration from him and says, yeah, that's what I want to do. They narrow their focus. School becomes relevant. They're making connections. They get an opportunity to confirm, yep, that's what I want to do. Or, quite frankly, say, boy, I wanted to be a veterinarian, but all the animals are sick that come here. Yeah, that's what a veterinarian does. Okay, but it's a way to eliminate the ones that they don't want. That's awesome. Then they go to the appropriate post-high school education, whether that's a certificate or a 2-year degree or more. And what's the starting point? And then they live a long and have a fulfilling career and live a contented life. Cue the angelic sounds. Ah. That happens sometimes, and it's great when it does. Unfortunately, here's how it mostly goes. You have a school counselor, and I'm one of these that said, okay, the counseling, the career path, yeah, that's the counselor's job. That's why I pay tax dollars. Most counselors have 300 students that they're serving, and they're responsible for 3 primary things. The scheduling for the schools, and which is mostly early in the semester, they kind of get that together. The social and emotional things. So you get a kid cutting themselves or a pregnant kid like that. Let me tell you where their attention, and then they're going to be the career expert in every single career. That doesn't even make sense, but that's the model we have. Here you have parents, I'm one of these, that spend a lot more. Either you have somebody that's completely disengaged, and unfortunately, there's some of those, and we got to figure out how do we get to them. Or you have a parent, sort of like me, said, I don't know what you want to do, but here's the schools that I think I want you to go to, because I want to be proud that you went to this school. So I'm looking at the school before I'm thinking, well, what do you want to do? It's backwards, isn't it? Anyway, okay. So they get their inspiration from somewhere. Every kid wants to be a professional athlete. So they get inspired by LeBron James, or they like the lifestyle, they want to be Kim Kardashian. I personally don't want to be Kim Kardashian. Or, God help us, and it doesn't happen so much in Sheboygan County, but they're inspired by some charismatic kid that's part of a gang. Okay, they're going to be inspired by something. Let's figure out where we can make that happen. They lose interest in school because it's not connected, it's not relevant to them, they're just drudgery, it's getting through, okay, and they don't have a chance to try it out. Either they're told it's 4-year college, 4-year college, 4-year college, or maybe they say, I don't want to do any more education, I don't want to do it, I'm just going to get out of here, I got to get out of town. And do they live a fulfilling career? I think eventually people find it, you hope, but sometimes that's a long and circuitous route to find that path. So, Inspire Sheboygan County, and I think what you guys are doing really focuses on this inspiration and confirmation. You get a chance to do that. But right here, I want to highlight four legs. Then you saw that puzzle piece thing come together. It's these 4 legs, and it's important. I show teachers is an important part of this. This can't just be put on counselors. If the engagement in the education side is just the counselors, we're missing the boat. We're missing the boat. So it's got to be broader than that. Students and parents have to obviously be part of that, but you got a lot of assistance from the employers serving as a career coach and providing those activities. There's a book, I don't know if anyone has read this book, so maybe some of the educators have. This is by Jamie Vollmer about schools cannot do it alone. And that made an impact on me that says, hey, this whole developing our kids isn't a school thing, it's a community thing. Yes, schools are part of that thing, that's part of the early part. So that's why we've put all these 4 pieces together that says it's educators and employers, but the parents and students working together. It makes sense, all right? So the school, today the reality is there are companies, I mean here's one that want to do this, but how do they do that? Well, there's been lots of programs, and everyone wants to have another program, another take your kid to school day, another program, but there's no structure to keep track of that stuff. It's not coordinated, it's not centralized, and somebody had made, in fact, one of the superintendents had made the comment to me, there's just, they'd say, well, the businesses want to work with the schools and the schools. I said, so why aren't you doing that? There's just too many relationships and too many programs to try to manage. So here's the snow globe. Who was asking me what the snow globe is? This is my analogy. So all those programs, whether it's a job shadow, whether it's like a snow globe, and here it is, here educators, figure it out. Here, Delmarva, figure it out and try to sort through that thing. The reality is you've got today, and you've got this important but not very urgent thing going on. Guess what gets pushed to the side every time? So the solution is we have Inspire Sheboygan County. We formed as a separate standalone 501c3 entity. Standalone it was important for us, we thought, because if you're part of another organization, if you come under the umbrella of other motivations, interests, a direction can kind of get commingled. So we're solely focused on this. Conceptually, how we've done this is we're a bookshelf. So all those programs, all those work-based learning, the JA program that I was talking to JA, those are programs that are great for kids. That we have some of these Project Grow, these work-based learning activities, job shadows, all those are programs. Well, wouldn't it be nice if we put those like books on a bookshelf that I can keep track of? Discussion boards, those are bookshelf. And then I am the librarian. So that's conceptually how we work. A library doesn't write any of the books, and sometimes they don't have all the books on the shelf. So people coming in, businesses, schools, say, hey, it would be great if we had a career coaching for a phlebotomist. I just make that up because I like to say phlebotomist. But you need so that's how we work. It's sort of like a bookshelf and a librarian. All right. So one other point that structurally our business model, we are funded by the users. We think that's important to have skin in the game. So all our money, all our funding comes from the schools and the employers to be part of this. Think of that. You've got employers that are saying, well, we're helping you. We're providing the career guidance, and will you make us pay? And there's a couple people who have said that. They said that's how it works. So it vets out all the people that are just kind of interested in it from the ones that are committed. And so that's how we've done that. And they should expect a return on their investment. All right? They're invited to be members, although we're not that selective. We're being a little more selective now, more to try to fill out the careers of interest that the kids have expressed to make sure we have coaches for them. We ask for a 12-month non-renewal notice. So every year they get a chance to continue on. that sort of Damocles of accountability is every year. Companies should get a chance to say, I want to do this, it's working for me or it's not, and we have that dialogue. I'm intrigued more times than not when I'll call up the CEO of a company about making a comment and say, how do we increase the participation? They're so apologetic. They're apologetic to me, saying, oh, I'm really sorry, I know we got to get the people. I said, well, I'm a service to you, so how do we work this together? It's interesting, that mindset. We're a single person. I brought the entire organization with me today. Here I am. And so we have one person, that's it. Quite frankly, anybody know what Lean Six Sigma or any Lean Six Sigma is? I'm a Lean Six Sigma black belt. And so if you think of this as a career discovery process that goes along, you've got the employer and you've got the schools. I'm waste. In the middle here, if this system works well, I should be able to eliminate my role, and I'm working on that. That's one of my personal measures of success. We're a little ways away from that, but I'm serious as a heart attack that's where we ought to be going. So I don't want to be building this thing. This should just work. It should just work if you make the structure right. We're overseen by an 11-person board, 3 representatives from school districts, 3 from Sheboygan County employers, 3 from the post-secondary schools. We just happen in the county to have a CTE, or a tech school, a very good tech school, a 2-year feeder school for the Wisconsin system, and then I guess they're private, 4-year college in the county. Worked out rather well. So all of them are represented as well for that continuum. We have a representative from the Chamber of Commerce and one from the Economic Development Corp. That's easy for me to say. And as I mentioned before, we are solely focused on our mission. We've had people come in and say, oh, well, if we gain enough money, we can start creating another scholarship. No, other people do scholarships. That's not what we're about. Oh, we can create another program. No, this is, and if you want to make a donation to us, we don't take donations. We say, give it to JA. JA needs donations. That's not what we're about. Ours is about membership, and you got to use it. If you're not using it, I'll give you your money back. All right. So we're facilitating those connections, that communication. It's about communicating and providing a centralized resource. Okay, maybe it makes obvious sense. Why would this be important? Well, obviously it makes better informed academic and career planning. Legislatively, Wisconsin is mandating that for next school year. But so it makes sense. Every kid ought to have some sort of academic and career plan. And it can change, but just think about what you want to do, kids. And the schools are obviously jumping on that. Gives them access to that experiential learning, wherever that is. Try things out. Find out what you like, what you don't like, what jazzes you. And better alignment with those careers and educational path. Benefits for the employees or employers. It certainly creates a dialogue, not just this, but the whole dialogue of what do we need? Companies know their demographics and where they're going to have holes going forward. Well, that ought to be a conversation, not reactive, but with schools saying, okay, we're going to be needing people like this. How do we do that? How do we fill those gaps? Informs that workforce about the skills and qualities they're going to need. So, and helps promote your industry. So some industries have a reputation, some earned, some unearned, but to say, hey, we're a great healthcare. Okay, the healthcare industry can promote themselves. The manufacturing can say, hey, you ought to come here. Hospitality in our area is a big one. Promoting your industry, say, kids, you ought to come here. So is it a bit of a marketing tool for sure. Are you promoting your company as the company of choice? Yeah, we want you to come work for Delmarva because we're kick butt. I mean, you ought to come work here. We're great, kids. There's no guarantee they're going to work there, but you're doing that early on. Promoting yourself. And some companies have, as part of their core competencies, is community involvement. So it provides an opportunity for employees to express that. Kohler Company, I think you may have heard that name. That's a major company in our region. They use this as a recruiting tool for some of their 30-somethings because the 30-somethings want a way to give back and connect into the community. So they're saying, hey, we're part of Inspire Sheboygan County. That's an attractant for some of their hires. All right, helps keep local talent local. That's, I think, every company's trying to do, so you're vying for it. All right. Are we successful? Well, so far so good. Our initial scope has been, as I mentioned, K-12 schools and employers in Sheboygan County, just our county here. We set, and I don't know if this is more of an indictment of our goal-setting process or actual achievement of our results, but our goals, we set 25 employees employers with 60 career coaches in 3 school districts out of 9 of total school districts. We have about 30 schools in those 9 school districts. So, but the school districts we targeted the top 3. We surpassed all of those substantially after the first year. We're into our, Steve in fact asked, he says, so with 233 career coaches where we are, well, that was at the end of 12 months. We're now into month 13th, and we're at about 266 or so. And we're well over 300 with some of the people that are pending. All right, so it's very good. These 3 school districts, obviously, the biggest ones represent 67% of students. So it wasn't the majority of the school districts, but we got the majority of the kids. Right now, we're almost 80% of the kids are involved. Year 2, we've set the objectives, and we're still refining these to get the remaining 2, and we've already have a commitment from the one school, and one has already joined in. So we're going to have the entire school system part of our system. Student usage, and this isn't a very good measure because it's not an outcome that an outcome. Boy, my kid logged into career cruising today. That's not a big a milestone, but it's an indicator of use. So if it has to be used by both employers and kids, 75,000 logins is what we're targeting. We are on pace for that, and so if we just level off, which we're not leveling off, that's on a trajectory, actually asymptotic, really getting up. So anyway, we're encouraged by that. Awareness and use by parents. So we really want to get the parents engaged. I think we were at dinner last night. So Robert says, so how are you doing that? Yeah, that's a good question. That's why I have question marks. We're working on that. The educators know this all too well. The engaged parents make the students much more effective. So how do we do this? And I just was at a presentation at one of the local schools, and it went very well. The parents really loved what we had to say like that. But the parents that show up, you want to get to them too. But there's a whole bunch that didn't show up. And so how do we get to them? I'm going to be interested to talk to some of you and hear your ideas like that. Okay, and now we're trying to round out the top 40. So the careers of interest that the kids have already expressed on their side of this, and you'll see the sides of this. We're trying to fill out those out to make sure these are what the kids are interested in. And companies can also promote and say, hey, we want you to be a mechanical engineer, even if that's not a career of interest. You ought to consider that kid, right? Well, I want to say this, right? And we're defining the long-term outcomes. That's what I just mentioned before. And then we are probably going to be expanding to the K-16 because the tool doesn't really care what grade you're in. Going to the K-16 and maybe going geographically beyond Sheboygan County. All right. So lastly, I just want to say a couple watch outs as you guys go through this. Watch out for scope creep. At least it was for us. Almost from the first month. Oh, we ought to go to Ozaukee County. We ought to go up to Manitowoc. Okay, hold on here, folks. Let's walk before we run. This organizational inertia, and I come from the business world, boy, I thought the resistance to change and doing like that. You haven't seen organizational inertia until you've been to the schools. And let me tell you, that there is a lot of resistance to change because people get set. And look, there's a lot of going on. Maybe in this state, but in Wisconsin, there's a lot going on with implementing Common Core, with implementing the teacher effectiveness, all that stuff. That's a lot of change to handle. So I'm empathetic, but just recognize it is. We'll get there. I'll be able to eliminate my position when this becomes the way we do things. It becomes integrated into the workflow or the school day rather than it's another thing to do. It's still another thing to do at this point, and I get that, but when we get that part of the workflow, that'll be important. I'll just move down here. Passive versus assertive participation. What I liked what Mr. Stockbridge was saying, that would be, what he was describing was more active participation. I've been a little frustrated. Frustrated. I guess impatient is good sometimes. Companies have signed up. They have their career coaches. They have their profile. They have offered things, and then they sit there waiting for the kids to ask. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's a bit passive. And the tool can be used to be more proactive to engage. And what he was describing that with Dorothy was great. That's how you want to be engaged, and the tool allows you to do that. So I'm hoping that happens. Silos, college or bust. Silos is just, and we've seen about that with the middle school counselors and high school counselors. I was surprised they didn't even talk to each other, and let alone having the counselors and the educators or the faculty talk. So part of this is just shining the light on it, and they're starting to do that much more than they have in the past. Is it because of me? Probably not. It's because we're just shining a light, and the superintendents have been keen on this, so once they say this is where we're going, that all of a sudden becomes. The college or bust thing, I know we're going to keep, that was the mantra, right? Okay, and there's nothing wrong with college, but it can't be the only thing. Kids need to get it that it's not a school thing, it's them. So this can't be, we're going to go sign on to career cruising when we're having this homeroom in school. And one of my measures is in the May, June, and July, are the kids using it? And they were using some of it this past year, which was encouraging. I'm looking forward to this year when they've really started to be engaged. And some speculate, is there an interest gap? Well, that's something that we all have to work to. Is our kids even care about working, and what do they want to do? Well, they need to figure out how they're going to make a living, and living in mom's basement isn't going to be isn't a long-term plan. All right, so that's what I have. When we connect the students to the best workforce, are we taking questions now, or we're doing that later on? Okay, later on. Okay, that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.